Mr. Joe Kleon.
Hello, how you doing?
Photographer extraordinaire. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Yes, we can. All right. You're a big time photographer, long time radio guy. I want to get into all that good stuff, but one of the main reason you're on, you have a great event coming up.
Yes.
And I'd love to get into it. I'm an animal guy, so let's talk about that. What do you got going on?
I've been volunteering as a photographer for a place called Kitten Crazy in Medina for 9 years, and I've done 5. This will be my 5th fundraiser that I've done for them. I put a bunch of my concert photos online on Kitten Crazy's eBay site, and all the proceeds go to them. They're a 501c3, 930 Lafayette Road in Medina. The website is kittencrazy.org. That's 2 Ks, kitten and crazy with a K.org. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We have an open house coming up on Sunday where you could go down there. They'll show you behind the scenes what goes on with the cats, how they vet them, how they vaccinate them, and take care of them. And my friends Jim and E-Rock from Wish You Were Here, the classic rock duo, they'll be there. They'll be there performing live. All kinds of prizes. I'll be there selling photos, and the auctions for the actual fundraiser go live day after tomorrow on Friday, the 24th. There'll be about 100 auctions, and they'll be live for 10 days.
That is fantastic, man. I'm a big animal guy. I got a couple of cats myself. And so I think that is super, super cool. And we actually had a chance to have Wish You Were Here on. So E-Rock was actually on the show. So I think that's cool. What time is it again? And where can people look at the photos?
Noon to 3 on Sunday will be the open house where Jim and E-Rock are playing. The auctions go live on Friday, day after tomorrow, and in the morning on Friday, and they'll be live for 10 days.
What kind of stuff you got on there?
For the photos?
Yeah.
Oh, I always put up my very best photos. Eddie Van Halen and Kiss and Elton John and Paul McCartney. A lot of Michael Stanley, because I know there's a lot of Michael Stanley fans, and I worked with Michael for 20 years as his concert photographer. So just really the biggest Ringo Starr and a lot of metal stuff, Rush, Scorpions, UFO, a lot of hard rock and metal. Really what I think are the best photos that people would be the most interested in.
That's cool. I've seen some of your stuff, and it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Somebody texted in Kitten Crazy, great place.
It really is a great place. I mean, the cats are all free roaming. There's no cages. They have a bunch of big rooms, and there's just free roaming cats. You go in, sit on the couch, and the cat that wants to pick you will come over and it will pick you.
How'd you get involved in this?
I'm a big cat guy, so I wanted to use my photography skills to help out a cat shelter. And you go on Pet Finder, where most people go to look for pets when they're adopting.
Yeah.
And you see all these cell phone photos, and they're okay, but they're never really have any attention to detail or the backgrounds. They're just kind of cell phone photos of the cats, and I wanted to kick it up a notch. So I sent out some emails to volunteer at some places, and Kitten Crazy replied. The owner, Wendy Murato, who is a dear friend of mine now, she was friends with E-Rock, so it kind of worked out perfectly. And I went down there, started taking photos. At first, I would take like blankets with pictures of cats or paw prints and tack them up on the wall and use those as the backgrounds. And then about 5 years ago, I actually built with a friend of mine a photo studio. I think it's the world's first photo studio just for cats.
Wow.
And it's on one of those carts that you see in restaurants that like the busboys put dishes on. Yeah. And we built this little house that sits down into the cart. So it's right about it at eye level. It's easy to take the cats in and out. It has its own indoor lighting. It has removable backdrops. And it's the first photo studio for cats. And we have a bunch of really cool backdrops. And when you go on Pet Finder and you go through a bunch of cell phone photos, and then you come to the ones, with the backdrops, and they're on the moon and they're in Chichen Itza in Mexico, they're really eye-catching.
That's hilarious.
I'll tell you what, man, I have 2 cats. One is Pepper. I've had her for quite some time. She's a little bit older cat now, but she's cool. She kind of lays in the back, does her own thing. When she wants to be pet, she'll come up to you. And she's cool. I got this other one at a shelter, and she's a great little cat, Mackenzie, but she's scared of literally everything. If you sneeze, she takes off for half a mile. And it took us a year to get her out from like underneath the bed because she just didn't want to come out. She's just terrified of literally everything. She loves ice cream, and that's the only time that she'll come near you. If you have a bowl of ice cream, she'll come up sit with you, lick the hell out of the bowl, and then she'll leave again for the rest of the night. So I mean, cats have such personality. People don't seem to understand it. They think that cats suck sometimes, but cats are literally the best. They really are.
They really have dynamic personality. Is that one of them behind you in your on your background there?
Not mine. No, there's just one that I saw today online. That mine would never sit still for a picture.
Cats really have dynamic personalities. I mean, you can teach a dog to jump through a hoop just by repetition and giving them treats, but cats are like cognitive thinkers. You know, they you can just see their wheels spinning, and they're really smart. They're really smart animals.
Yeah, they definitely have their own kind of personality. It's cool. So I'm glad you're doing that. Well, I might have to take the wife and family up there on Sunday to check that out. You said noon to 3?
Yeah, and it's only about 5 minutes from downtown Medina, so it's not that far. And you can get the address once again at kittencrazy.org. That's 2 Ks, Kitten and Crazy. Also their Facebook page. And again, the address is 930 Lafayette Road in Medina.
People are texting in. I love cats. Mine, Miss Polly says hi.
Great.
I have 3 beautiful pictures you took of Michael Stanley. And then Chris is checking in. Joe, don't be selling prints of the water shot you sold me. That's mine. Which I have to say, he sent me. That's awesome, man. I'm telling you, that is an awesome picture.
Thanks for Chris for setting this up, but Chris didn't buy exclusivity to that photo. So,
you know what? I do want to reinforce something you said, Joe, not too long ago, and it's so true. If you've ever rescued, and I used to rescue schnauzers, and at times in my life I've had up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 of them over the years, and so on and so forth. But if you open your heart and go to a place, because that's where you want to get a pet. If you really want to have something love you unconditionally, and you open your house, go to a rescue, go to a place like Kitten Crazy, and you are absolutely right. They find you.
Absolutely.
You will drive there thinking, I'm going to go get myself a cat or a dog, and they pick you. And once you get home and realize that, the bond's there, and it's one of the coolest feelings in the world.
And it's really bizarre because I've seen cats at Kitten Crazy that maybe their owner passes away and the cat's 7, 8 years old, and they're in this new environment now at the shelter, and they're terrified and they hide for weeks and weeks, but then somebody will come in and they'll come right up to them and they'll jump on their lap. And for some reason, they just bond with that person. And it's really cool to see.
I agree.
Yeah, I've been an animal guy for all my life, but the first cat that I had, I got her again at a shelter in Berea, I believe, and I volunteered there for a little while also, and she was like the sweetest cat ever. And then I got a dog, and so they got along kind of cool because my dog would kind of walk by, and the cat would just walk up and hit him in the face, slap him around a little bit, and then take off. But they ended up becoming like really good friends. And then I lost the cat in my divorce, and it sucked, and I missed that cat forever. So I had to replace the cat. Now I have 2. So yeah, cats are just are very cool. So I'm very happy that you're doing that. So
and the one thing great about Kitten Crazy is those cats I mentioned that are terrified, they're in a new place and they're scared. They go out of their way to socialize those cats. And they'll be terrified one week when I go in to do photos. I'll come back a couple weeks later, and they're just so much more socialized. And they really go out of their way to the cats who are struggling to really help them adapt. And they have kids that come in. I think there's a Girl Scout troop that comes in, and all they do is play with and socialize the cats. As soon as you walk in the door of that place, you just realize that the vibe is so incredible. It's just different than any other shelter.
Well, what's sad though is that the cats are there for that many weeks to get socialized. There are too many of them in these shelters, and it's really sad because no matter what shelter you go to, we've gone out to the one that's in Elyria, we've gone to one in the one downtown close to area, and there's just cat after cat after cat. These cats need homes, man. They really do. So.
Yep.
And Kitten Crazy adopts out 650 or more a year. So they really are working hard to, take these homeless cats or these cats that come in off the street and find them forever homes.
That's great.
Let's see here. I've had a couple of cats were strays. One was pregnant, which I did not know. Had 5 babies, found them all homes. So that's cool.
Very cool.
There was one cat that my mom had, though. My mom had this one cat that she adopted, and this cat was a dick. But he only loved her. Like if anybody else went near this cat, his name was Leon of all things. But If you went near even me, and I saw my mom every single day, if I went near my mom or that cat wanted to rip my face off, but would sit on her lap and purr all day long. So it's just something. Cats just have those kind of personalities.
Yeah.
They really have distinct personalities, and they're no two are even close to being alike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's amazing.
So we'll talk about that again in just a little bit. But I wanted to have you on for so many reasons, not just the fact that you're doing this great fundraiser, but you're a radio guy as well as an incredible photographer.
Thank you.
And so I want to talk about your time in radio, where you started, and where you think this business is today, because I'll tell you how I feel.
You don't want to know how I feel.
Yeah, I do want to know. So
Yeah, we do.
how did you get into radio? How did you start off with that?
I started actually at John Carroll University at WUJC, as it was called back then. Now it's WJCU. But I was being suspended from high school about 2 weeks before my senior year ended. And I grew up in Cuyahoga Falls, so I was at Cuyahoga Falls High School, and I was getting suspended. I was waiting to go in the principal's office, and above the bench where I was sitting was a sign-up sheet for career day at John Carroll. And I didn't even know what John Carroll was, but it was a day off of school, so I signed up for it, rode the bus up there. And I've been interested in radio before. I had a couple experiences when I was a young kid. At WCUE, which was an AM station in Cuyahoga Falls that played rock, that Matt Patrick worked at one of his first jobs, maybe his first job.
He was awesome.
And he let me sit in the studio with him and showed me how everything worked when I was like 12 years old. And that got me interested in radio. So I was roaming around John Carroll during this career day thing when I was a senior in high school and walked past the radio station. And I walked in, and there was E-Rock, who I've been best friends with ever since. And this was around 1986. And John Carroll's kind of a preppy place, a Jesuit university. I think he had a Zeppelin shirt on. I had a Rush shirt on. We both had long hair. And, 10 minutes later, we were back at his dorm smoking a bong. And he said, if you go to school here, I'll get you your own radio show. So that's the only reason I went to school there. I started on the air right when I signed up for classes. And got a job in the mailroom at Warner Brothers Electro Atlantic Records when they still had a Cleveland office. And one of the guys for ACO Records liked my radio show and got me a job at WONE in Akron. And that's how I started actually on commercial radio. And I did that for about 20 years.
That's awesome. Actually, real quick, I loved Matt Patrick. I don't know what you think of Matt Patrick, but Matt Patrick I thought he ended up becoming a friend of mine. And it's a shame that he passed away, but I thought he was extraordinarily talented. Actually could have been one of the best talk show guys of all time. But
I owe him everything. I mean, I used to go down to what they call the TGIF parties in downtown Cuyahoga Falls, which turned into Rockin' on the River.
Yeah.
And I was 12. My mom would pick me up from school and take me down there on Fridays, pick me up like 3 or 4 hours later. I was watch the bands. And I started cleaning up afterwards and helping the radio guys clean up. So one day the radio guys took me to the station and took me into the record room and gave me a bunch of albums. And Matt Patrick was there, let me sit in on the studio with him. I mean, I was this annoying 12-year-old that he's working, and he still was cool enough to take me in and showed me how to talk up to the post and showed me how the equipment worked. And was just a really, really super guy to me. And that put that radio buzz in my ear, and that led to, a 20-year career doing radio.
I actually hosted a couple of Rockin' on the River stuff when MMS took over them. They weren't as huge as they were, but it was fun. Good times with the Rockin' on the River stuff. In fact, I think you grew up in Cuyahoga Falls. You grew up, I think, right down the street from my wife, and like her brother, I think, has been over to your house. I think he was friends with your brother, Jim Armstrong.
Sounds familiar, but I'm not.
You would know, but they grew up together, and so Cuyahoga Falls is nice. I was just down there the other day.
My mom and my brother still live there.
Like we're at 13th Street around there.
Right, real close to the Five Corners, right by Chapel Hill. There, about a mile away from there.
All right, yeah, love that area. But that's cool. I mean, radio has certainly changed since you were in it and I was in it. It's a different animal now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd want to jump on that animal right now. I do some radio shows for an indie network as part of my day job, but I don't know if I'd want to do commercial radio again, especially for some place like iHeart or, Cumulus or anybody like that.
Yeah. I spent 23 years in commercial radio, and towards the end, they promised me I had a job after Mike Trevisano passed away, and then all of a sudden said I didn't. And I mean, it was a weird experience watching radio from when I started to where it ended up going. And was that the same kind of thing for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I moved to Savannah for 5 years to be closer to my daughter and did a morning show down there. And I moved back to take the job at NCX, which is where I met Michael Stanley.
Yeah.
And worked at Rock 107 doing 7 to midnight for quite a few years. And I just saw the medium deteriorate once they changed the telecommunications law of 1934 when Clinton changed it.
Yeah.
You used to be able to only own 2 stations in any market. And
Right.
once that was changed, now you can own 50% of the stations in any market. And that's when Cumulus and CBS and Cheap Channel, that's when they bought 90% of the stations. And that's when the talent was devalued. And now you're voice tracking in 5 cities for an extra $2,000 a year. And I was lucky that I got out of it when I did. I kind of saw the decline happening and kind of fell into photography by accident. And it was the perfect time to make that transition.
What year did you get out of radio?
About probably a lot. My last job was promotion director for a station in Canton, a top 40 station called Q92, and I got out of there about 11 years ago.
Yeah, you're right.
It was a bit after the decline, but still, yeah.
But you're right. I mean, when those big companies took over, it really was. You just saw such a change. I mean, when I started, I mean, we got away with, you said the F word, you said fuck on the radio, and you got a talking to. And then all of a sudden these companies took over and you swore you made a mistake and you were out the door.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't as fun as it used to be. We're talking about guys that when they took apart the old board at MMS, underneath it was leftover Coke from when guys were partying in there. And you could see liquor stains from stuff that fell down in between the pots. And it was just, you knew it was a party. It was a good time. And it just became not so much fun.
And
after a while,
it was universal because I don't have the radio background to match either one of your resumes, but I spent 25 years on the road as a comic, which meant that every time I pulled into a city and was appearing that week at the club, one of the days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, the show had giveaway tickets and they wanted to interview the comic and stuff like that. And every single studio you walked in, you could count on leftover pizza, posters on the wall, and roaches in the ashtray.
And a vomit stain on the carpet.
And right. And then one morning I walked in for my interview and everybody in the building had a suit and tie on, and it was never the same.
Yeah. And you went from being able to add your own songs in the playlist to a regimented playlist of 200 songs, and you played the same shit every single day.
Yep.
Yeah, I was actually at one point in charge of I wasn't any kind of title of music director, but they had me go over and just hit the button on the computer that would load all the songs in. And it just became not fun. I mean, I went from pulling 8 tracks and carts and albums and cutting tape and putting CDs in to just pushing a button to load songs into a program. Yeah, it was such a different kind of feel.
And it was always cool to see the reel machine with the razor blade to splice tape.
Yeah.
It always had Coke residue on it,
Yep.
You remember Spaceman Scott?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I was in charge of actually one night he decided he was going to record his show and he recorded it on reel to reel. And I had to actually sit there with a razor blade and a little tape and cut this stuff up to make it sound good. And there was an art to doing radio.
Oh, yeah.
It really was. There was an art to doing it. And now it's lost all of that.
There was an art to splicing tape and doing it correctly and seamlessly, and now you just have a waveform and you can do it 50 times till you get it right. And back then, you cut the tape and you taped it together with little pieces of Scotch tape, and it was a chore to get it seamless where it was good transitions.
Yeah, it used to be fun. But anyways, so then you went from there. How'd you get into the photography aspect?
I bought a camera I couldn't afford to take on a trip to Mexico. I was going to Chichen Itza and Tulum and wanted good pictures of the Mayan ruins. Nice. And I came back from there and I just put the camera on auto and just was pointing and shooting, but I got really great pictures because it was a really good camera. And I came back and was wondering how I'm going to pay this camera off, put it on a credit card, hadn't made one payment yet. And I was a big fan of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Yep.
And I was listening and said they were going to do a show on the Mayans in a couple days. So I emailed them. There's a couple of my pictures. They used one on the front page of the website. put a link to my website where I had my own pictures of the Mayan ruins. And that night I sold about $400 worth of pictures.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, holy shit, I could actually make money with this thing. And I was working on the crew with Wish You Were Here, and I was working with Michael Stanley at NCX. So I started shooting both of those artists and started selling some photos. Then I started using some people that I knew in record labels and from radio when smaller bands would come to town, like Collective Soul, or metal bands like Anvil would play the Grog Shop or something. I'd get a photo pass. And every time I shot one of those shows, it was easier to get the next one. And then I started shooting for some publications. And once I started that, then it was really easy. And I had no idea it would explode into 20 years later. Now I've got about 1,500 shows under my belt.
Wow.
That's unbelievable, man, how that just happens. See, that's what I got to start doing. I got to start just picking some stuff up and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Throw the darts against the wall. Something will stick, man.
Yeah.
And it was a big grind for a while because I was working my day job and then doing these shows. And the last 6 or 7 years, I do about 100, 150 a year. I do 6 or 7 or 8 in a row sometimes in the summer, working the day job, doing a show at Blossom, coming home, working on the photos till 2 a.m, over and over and over. It was a big grind, and it was exhausting, but I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Certainly beats working in a factory.
Joe, I've been at my share of concerts, and I have watched photographers work really, really hard to get their assignment done for no matter where they're from, and setting up a shot, looking for a shot, working to get a shot, and so on and so forth. That all goes into it. But I want to ask, is there a photo that you don't even have to, that to yourself, when you printed it, was amazed that it made it on the reel? Is there one that accidentally you were just happened to push that button and caught some magic?
I can never tell when I shoot a show, like on the way home, if the photos are going to be any good or not. There's times where I think I'm in the zone, I'm dialed in, it's effortlessly done, and then I come home and the photos are, just kind of mediocre. And there's other times I really struggle and I come home going, God, these are going to suck. And they're really good, and I'm really happy with them. It's really hard for me to gauge in the moment what I'm doing. But there's some of my best photos, I didn't even realize I took them at the time. It's not like I pushed the button and went, that's going to be a great photo.
Right.
I sit at home and, my cat Getty was always on my lap. I called him my co-producer. He would sit with me when I was doing photos till 3 a.m. He wouldn't go up to bed until I was done with my photos. And I would go through them, and there would be the one photo from the show that was the iconic photo that would pop up on the screen. And I didn't even remember that moment because I was just so dialed into doing what I was doing. Even like my favorite band, Rush, who I've seen 50 times, and I've loved them since I was in, 3rd grade. I photographed them, and I was on the way home, and I was thinking, what were the first 3 songs that they played while I was shooting? And I had no idea because I was so in the zone that I didn't even pay attention to what they were, what they were doing. I was just totally into just trying to get the best exposures I could get.
Wow.
And the band, I love Rush. I interviewed Geddy Lee one time, and I thought it was one of the most amazing things ever. And then I insulted him, and I felt bad about it, but it was good radio.
Why did you insult him?
Because, okay, look, man, I'll be honest. I was a young punk kid who just got his job in radio. And so I didn't realize the magnitude of working at a station like MMS. And when I got to talk to Geddy Lee, of all people, again, I was 21 years old, 22. And so I said, man, it's amazing to talk to you. But has anybody ever told you sound like a girl sometimes when you sing? And he got a little pissed. And I felt bad. But yeah, it was so cool to be able to talk to guys like that. And I learned my lesson from that interview. Don't be a dick to some of these stars. But he actually finished the interview, and it was cool. So I've heard that people steal a lot of your stuff, though. Like,
yeah, they do.
When they find stuff online, would you sue the hell out of these people? What do you do?
Because I shoot so many high value celebrities, and they're published in magazines, people do steal them a lot. It's really difficult to go after people, but I try. And I've had some decent settlements, but it's really difficult. It's really difficult. A pretty interesting story about how I got into really people stealing my stuff. I was checking my web stats for my website probably 8 or 9 years ago. And when I first started shooting, I mostly had radio stuff on my website because I was a radio guy. And so I started putting some photos up, and I took a picture of my first camera, and I called it gear.jpg, and it was just this camera with like 2 lenses. And I put it up on my website. It was only up there for like a month, and then I took it down. Like 2 years later, I'm checking my web stats, and I see this photo, gear.jpg, has 3,000 views or hits in a month. And where did those come from? And it took me a while, but I found out that this Christian baby photographer outside of Seattle was hot linking my photo on her website. Do you know what hot linking is?
No.
But
You can, there's 2 ways you can put a photo on your website. You can download it and put it on your own server, and then it appears on your website. Or you can write code into the HTML code of the web page, and you can say, go to joekleon.com, find this photo, gear.jpg, and embed it on the website. If she would have just downloaded it and put it on her own server, I would have never known. But since she was sucking it from my server, then I could see that. So I went into Google and I typed in diseased penis, and I found the most horrific photo I could ever find, and I labeled it gear.jpg, and I uploaded it to my server. So now every time someone went to her website, that photo was coming up.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So now
hilarious.
So now she thinks I hacked into her website because she doesn't understand, and she's going to call the FBI. And I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Here's my address. Tell you my phone number. Tell them to call me. And a week later, now she's begging me, please take that down. I'm losing business. And I sent her 2 emails first, professional emails. I said, hey, you're stealing my bandwidth. Just take the photo down. And being the Christian woman that she was, she sent me this snarky email back. What are you going to do? Sue me in Seattle over a stupid camera photo? Ha, ha, ha. And she wouldn't take it down. I sent her a second email, and I said, you're really not going to like what I'm going to do. And I already knew what I was going to do. And she still didn't take it down. So now she's begging me to take it down, and I wouldn't. Like, sorry. And then she says, well, I had someone design the website for me. I don't even know how to take it down. And I said, well, if you would have told me that in the beginning, it's going to take me a couple weeks, I would have been fine with it. Right. But since you were a bitch, I'm not taking it down. And it took her about 2 weeks. It took her about 2 weeks to take it down.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, we used to get shit all the time because it's so easy to just go to websites and just take a photo. But you got to realize people took that stuff, you know.
Yeah,
people, that's their livelihood.
Well, major publications do it, like newspapers, and you would think like a newspaper or a major company would know better after how many years has the internet been around? 25. That you would know better than, or you would have ways to vet photos. There's an amplifier manufacturer that used a bunch of my photos on their endorsement page, and one of the photos they used was Guar. You know the band Guar.
Yep.
And so, my lawyer contacts them, and I get a phone call from the co-owner of the company. His name is actually in the company name. Oh, it was an intern that put that up. We didn't even know. And I said, well, who oversees the interns?
All right.
Your name is part of the company name. Doesn't the buck stop with you? And people just they don't vet when they put photos up. They just take them or just let somebody else do it, and they don't even think of the consequences. But it is somebody's livelihood. And if somebody from that company would have called me and said, hey, you want a guitar amp, a $300 practice amp or something for using this photo, I would have said, hell yeah. I'm not difficult, but when you steal my shit, then I do become difficult.
Then we got a problem. All right, some of the who are some of the more, do you have any difficult artists to work with?
Billy Joel was the worst.
Really?
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like that kind of guy.
Well, it had nothing to do with him personally, just his people. Everything's really regimented. I mean, we sit in the security or the area wherever, and they lead us to the stage, the promoter. They tell us where to stand. They tell us how long we can shoot. When we're done, they take us to the door. If you don't have a ticket to the show, they escort you out. It's really regimented. There's no time to venture off on your own or anything. They watch you while you're shooting. So they told us where to stand, and the show starts. And within like 20 seconds, this guy is right in my face screaming, get the F out of here. And he's like, my glasses are getting like showered with spittle because this guy is screaming and he's so close to my face. And I I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was with the band or he was just a crowd member that I was, because they put us kind of in front of some people in the crowd in the front. And so I had 2 cameras around my neck. I didn't think I grabbed my credential, my photo pass, to hold it up for him to see it. And when I held it up, he shoved me. And you can tell me to leave anytime and I'll leave, but don't put your hands on me.
Right.
And I really wanted to punch the guy, but somebody stopped me. And they as he threw everybody out. And someone told me later, and I don't know this for sure, but somebody told me that it was Billy Joel's tour manager. And there was 4 or 5 photographers. They threw us all over on the very side of the stage where you couldn't even get any shots. And when I came home, I looked at the timestamp between the first and the last photo, and it was 40 seconds. So we shot for 40 seconds. And,
oh my God.
And Sony Music stole a Billy Joel photo and put it up on BillyJoel.com.
I was going to ask, I mean, do these stars pay? Do these artists pay you, or I mean, how does that work, or how do you get into these shows to take them, or I mean,
I can shoot for a publication, I can shoot for an artist, their publicist, or the record label, or the artist themselves. It just depends on who hires me. So it kind of varies from show to show, but mostly I've done most of my shooting for Scene Magazine in Cleveland. I wrote for them when I was in my early 20s, when I was doing college radio. I'd interview Fates Warning or Metallica or bands like that, and then I would write articles using the interviews for Scene. So I've been with Scene for a long time, and I really love the place. I have a great association with them, and my photography career would never have exploded the way it did if it wasn't for them giving me access to all of the big shows that they did.
Yeah, I was at a Dennis DeYoung show. Dennis DeYoung, Sticks, and I was like front row seats. And man, there was like a couple of different photographers. It was at the MGM, and they just were right in front of me while I'm trying to watch a show. I mean, but it was cool because they were actually very nice to me when I was like, "Hey man, can you move over a little bit?" But that's got to be a hell of a job, and it sounds like such fun to do something like that.
I always try and be conscientious of if I'm in the pit or there's no pit and I'm in front of the crowd. I never try and stay in the same place for very long because I don't want to be in the way of people. If you're in the front row and there's no pit, you paid a couple $100 for a ticket. You don't want to look at my ass sitting there in front of you. So I always try and be conscientious of that. But a lot of people don't. A lot of other photographers don't. And a lot of people in the crowd sometimes will get pissed, naturally, rightfully so, because if the promoter tells me to stand here and not move, that's where I'm going to stand. And I can't help it. If somebody behind me gets pissed, I'll apologize to them.
It's your job.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do. And there's been a few times where people have really, really been pissed, and the promoter tries to diffuse the situation and says they're only there for 3 songs. But if I paid $500 for a front row ticket, I wouldn't want to lose 3 songs with some fat guy like me standing in front of them, you know?
Joe, we've had musicians on that have talked about how the business changed touring and changed recording and changed all of that. You and Seth spent a segment of this interview talking about how radio has changed. I want to know, have cell phones changed the photography business? Because I remember walking out on stages or being in places like Vegas where before the lights went out, the announcement came over saying no photography and no recording. Mm-hmm. And now they don't even bother with that announcement because it's impossible.
Yeah, there's some artists in smaller venues that do so, like the Akron Civic Theater and stuff. But yeah, it is impossible. And I've even seen people at Blossom in the pit for bands like Dave Matthews that are shooting with cell phones. And I don't know how you can get a decent picture of a concert with the cell phone, but it's kind of devalued the industry a little bit because these artists can find thousands of photos from fans with their cell phones. So why would they want to pay me when they can just get them from there? So it's kind of the same way that radio got devalued when the consolidation happened. It's kind of the same thing.
I met another person. I don't know if you know her, Janet McCosker.
I'm really good friends with Janet McCosker. I love her. She is probably the best Cleveland photographer that's ever lived.
She did a calendar once, and she did she helped out with one of our Codes for Kids charities that we did with the Triv show, and she was spectacular. And I mean, it just seems like she really does have a good thing going too, and it seems like a very cool job. And are there a lot of guys out there like you guys?
There's a decent amount. Janet's awesome. She was kind of a mentor when I first started. She's become a really good friend of mine. She's a big fan of my work. She's referred me to gigs that she couldn't take when people offer her gigs. She'll call me and ask me if I can do it.
Nice.
Like Jimmy Page, wrote his memoirs. Her picture of Jimmy Page is on the back cover. That's how iconic and well known of a photographer that she is. And back then, when someone like her or my art gallery partner, another great Cleveland photographer, Anastasia Pantios, who's a really, really dear friend of mine, when you would shoot Led Zeppelin or shoot those bands back in the 70s, you shot the whole show. If it was a 3-hour show, you shot the whole show.
Yeah.
Now it's 3 songs. Sometimes it's 2 songs. Sometimes it's 1 song. Like for Garth Brooks, they wanted the first 60 seconds of the first 2 songs. Like some douche is going to stand there with a stopwatch, and after 60 seconds, you have to put your camera down until the next song. I stayed home. That's just, it's getting more and more ridiculous.
I heard Marilyn Manson was a pain in the ass.
He always messes with photographers and will try to spit on them, and will grab a red Solo cup with water and like walk across the stage, and then all of a sudden he'll try and throw it and hit your camera gear. And he's just an asshole. I mean, if you don't want photographers, don't allow them into your show. So I was at a Marilyn Manson show in Youngstown, and I was talking to this photographer, and he actually spit on her at a show.
Jeez.
Hit her in the face with spit. And so she said the next time she photographed him, she took a water bottle and pissed in it and had it in her camera bag. And when he came over, like by the stage, she grabbed the sides of the water bottle and squeezed it and showered him with her piss.
Nice.
I'll tell you what, though, artists can be asses, man. I remember I went to even in radio. I mean, I'm sure you know, I went to a Megadeth show, and I was supposed to bring them on stage. And I didn't know.
Stories are everywhere.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I didn't know I was going to bring them on. It was like a last minute thing. They called me and said, "Seth, come on down to the Odeon. You're going to bring on Megadeth." I was like, "All right, sweet." And so I get down to the thing, and the Odeon, so they have like an upstairs green room area. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking up the stairs, and this publicist is in front of me, and she goes, "Button your jacket up." I was like, "What the hell am I buttoning my jacket for?" And I look down, and I'm wearing a Metallica shirt. And she goes, "If Dave sees that shirt, he's going to toss you out of the building." And I was like, "Dude, I understand the history, but seriously, it's just a T-shirt." And she's like, "No, button the jacket up or take the shirt off. I don't care what you do. Just do not go up another stair until you take that thing off." Artists can be dicks, and it's unfortunate because we all have jobs to do, and they're just like that.
Megadeth did a CD release party for Countdown to Extinction at the Natural History Museum in Cleveland in the dinosaur room. Yeah. And it was for media people. They had all kinds of beer in these big ice tubs and stuff. Dave was sitting at a table so you could come up and get his autograph and stuff, and you were not allowed to enter the line with a beer because Dave would throw you out if you walked up to him drinking a beer.
Man, yeah, some of these guys were very, very touchy. How can people get a hold of your pictures? Do you have them for sale? What's the deal?
JoeCleon.com, where you can find me on Facebook. Email is joecleon@yahoo.com. And if you have an artist request, you can message me and ask me if I've shot them. And if I have, I'll send you some proofs. And you can also look at the artists that I'm going to have auctioned off starting this Friday for my Kitten Crazy benefit. If you go to kittencrazy.org with 2 Ks, kitten and crazy with an org, like what's on my shirt here. Starting Friday morning, we'll have about 100 auctions up. I also have some shots from Anastasia, my dear friend who donated some photos. Like David Bowie's first U.S. show was in Cleveland, at Music Hall, and she has photos of that show. And she has a lot of iconic photos like Prince's Purple Rain Tour, Aretha Franklin. She was shooting Michael Stanley in the early 70s. So she's donated some of those photos. And if you go to kittencrazy.org Friday morning, there'll be a banner on the front page of the website, which will take you to a page which will have links to all of those auctions. So that's what I would recommend. If you want to contact me, I can sell you some personally, but in the next couple of days, buy them so the proceeds go to Kitten Crazy, because it's a great place, and they really, they love they need the help. Not that they're, going to go bankrupt or anything, but, adopting out 650 cats is expensive when you're getting them spayed and neutered. If a cat gets run over by a car and gets his paw broken, has to be amputated or has to have surgery, they pay for it, but the adoption fee is still the same. So, they always need donations and need if you want to come down Sunday to the open house, bring stuff like bleach or detergent or anything like that, or just make cash donations, which you can also do on their website. It's a very worthy organization. Again, it's a 501c3. You can tax deduct your donations, and it's really, really, if you're a cat person, it's a phenomenal place.
All right, that's this Sunday, noon to 3.
I have
somebody's going to be. Who else is going to be there? E-Rock and
Jim Tig. They do a thing called the Classic Rock Duo. They're also members of Wish You Were Here.
Yep.
E-Rock, has run the band for almost 30 years, I think. But him and Jim do solo acoustic shows, probably 3, 4, 5 nights a week, all around Cleveland and surrounding areas. And they're very. I think they know 1,000 songs between the two of them, and they're just a really incredible acoustic duo. So they're going to be down there playing. We're going to have raffles and prizes for the kids, 50-50. You can go in the back, and they'll show you how the behind the scenes stuff operates in the shelter. It's really going to be a fun open house. It's Sunday, the 26th, from noon until 3, and the auctions I'm doing start this Friday, the day after tomorrow, which would be the 24th, and those will go for 10 days.
Mike?
Yeah. Two things happened to me, Joe, and it led to a question I wanted to ask you towards the end of the interview.
Okay.
One, Seth called me up and said, hey, we get to have Joe Kleon on, and it was like, great, that's going to be a wonderful time. And then a couple days later, the story was in the paper about how the Rock Hall has been given all the money or raised enough money to do their expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard both those things at the same time, I have thought to ask you, with what you said about the number of good quality artists, photographers that have documented rock and roll here in Cleveland, have you approached the Rock Hall about maybe having a photography room that highlights Cleveland photographers?
I've tried to get some photos used by them. Usually when the inductions are here in Cleveland, I will send them some photos to try and use in the broadcast production and stuff. But I've yet to be successful. I know Janet McCoska and Anastasia Pantios have had stuff there. But me personally, I've yet to have that happen. But that would be a huge honor for me. And I'm hoping that someday it will happen.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe this show and people listening and stuff like that, maybe we can, because you can't go tooting your own horn. I completely understand that, but there should be a room in that museum saying this is Cleveland, this is where rock started. It's also where rock photography started.
Well, the thing is too, is that Janet and Anastasia have these pictures from the 70s, iconic pictures of Paul McCartney when he was 40 or when he was 30, and all those people. I have them in 2005 when they're 65. So the younger photos in their prime for a lot of these iconic artists who are aging are a lot more palatable than my aging photos. But I mean,
they're awesome.
I mean, some of them are like they're not bad, but people would most rather have a photo of Bruce Springsteen in 1975 than they would in 2015.
I still think they should document the achievement of Cleveland, and you have been a pillar of that mural or that exhibit too. So
thank you very much. I would really, I would be a great honor to have my photos or even one photo somewhere in the Rock Hall. I hope one day that happens, but with the kind of luck I have, it'll probably happen after my death.
Yeah, that's when I'll be popular again too.
Yeah.
All right, real quick, Natalie wants to know where did you say it's at one more time?
Kitten Crazy, 930 Lafayette Road in Medina, about 5 minutes from downtown Medina. You can go to the website, kittencrazy.org. That's 2 Ks, kitten and crazy with a K. And you can get the address there. If you can't attend or don't want a concert photo for the auction, you can go there and donate. And you can also find them in the address on their Facebook page at Kitten Crazy.
I did post your website and Kitten Crazy on the comments here as well. So thank you, Joe, for coming on today. Really appreciate it, man.
I really appreciate you helping me promote the fundraiser. Thank you very much. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Good talking with you. Great stories and really, really, really cool stuff. So thank you, and check out joekleon.com. Got a hell of a history, man, and I thank you for everything.
Great talking to you too. If you ever need me back, man, hit me up. I'd love to come back.
Well, I want to meet you someday and check out some of your work.
Yeah, for sure. Let me know. Absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you again so much.